I remember Sam Harris said years ago that someday political correctness will get us all killed. Um, I wasn't sure what he meant at the time. I certainly know what he meant now. And it's becoming more and more true, unfortunately. I read a column in The Spectator this week by columnist Douglas Murray about the Manchester bombing in 2017. It was a horrific event, an Ariana Grande concert. 22 people were killed, and it was made all the worse because there was quite a few children among that number. A report came out about the security, the failings. How could this have happened? Why was he not apprehended? How did he slip through the cracks, essentially? And there was a number of failings, but one in particular stood out. It was a young security guard, a Mr. Lawler. He was very young, 18, 19 years of age. And he was asked, did he see anything, of course, and he was honest and said that yes, he saw the perpetrator before the fact. Well, obviously before the fact. He was carrying a rucksack, which in hindsight was the bomb. Very big and heavy rucksack. He was struggling with it, but his demeanor was very suspicious. He was, very. He would react strangely when people looked at him. He would have a panicky kind of look on his face, very twitchy and just a suspicious looking guy. When Mr. Lawler was asked why didn't he say anything, why didn't he report this, given the fact that the security threat at that time was very high in the country, he said he didn't want to say anything because he had darker skin than he had. He obviously wasn't a black guy, but he was from North Africa. He wasn't white. And if he was wrong, he didn't want to be accused of racism. So this stopped him reporting that. So imagine what this man has on his mind now and on his conscience. But how is this possible? How is it possible but that somebody would look at a suspicious person and not report it because they're afraid of being called a name? Well, this sounds incredibly familiar because in Rotherham and other places like Oxford around England, young white kids, girls, were systematically raped and tortured by Pakistani Muslims, and nobody wanted to do anything about it. Politicians, police, it was politically inconvenient. So they were prepared to let it happen and let them away with it. Why? Because they're afraid of being called a name. Have you any idea what that sounds like to the rest of the world? You're afraid of being called a name. They're raping your daughters on an industrial scale, and you don't do anything about it because you're afraid of being called a name? You're afraid of being called racist? Well, if you're not racist, why do you care what anyone says about you? You know what you are, you know what you aren't. So, Mr. Lawler, what's more important to talk about is the milieu with which an attitude like this can flourish. The kind of looking the other way because the person has dark skin, they're black, or they're Asian, euphemistically Asian. I'm not talking about the Chinese here, as you well know. Or increasingly gay or trans. These people are somehow beyond criticism. This is not equality. There's nothing about that speaks to equality. If we're all the same and we're all on a level playing field, then we get judged on our merits. We shouldn't see skin color the way that the far left and increasingly the left in general completely obsesses about. I don't know if these people know, but the only other people that think like that are white supremacists. They're the only other people that see skin color everywhere. The rest of us, don't want to see it at all. You know. So one thing I remember after this event as well was the police chief standing up addressing a crowd. I'll never forget it. He stood up with a straight face and said, "We may never know why a person would do something like this." I'm sorry, but we do know why he did it. Not least of all because they tell us ad nauseum. There's videos up on the internet of them telling us exactly who they are, what they're doing or going to do, and why they have done it. But people want to block this out. They say, we did it for religious reasons in the name of Islam because you were infidels and whatever. No, it couldn't be that. That couldn't be the reason. They will look for the political reason underneath. Somehow it must be our fault. Maybe they were mistreated in their homeland. Maybe the Crusades, maybe they had a distant ancestor that, it's probably our fault somewhere along the lines, This kind of masochism, this spineless masochism is absolutely sickening. And what it does, it lets the real culprits off the hook, is what it does. It shifts the blame from where the blame really needs to be. So this kind of political correctness absolutely has to die, or more people will die.